Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared, and today I want to talk about living in Independence because it has now been a year since I moved here from South Central Kansas. When I first started this channel, we had a homestead down in a small town on the border with Oklahoma, and I started this channel and it took off, and it took up so much of my time that I could no longer homestead. We also needed to get into a larger house because at that point my girls were becoming teenagers and they needed more space, and so we decided to move to the city. And because my channel, it just made sense to move to the Kansas City area rather than Wichita. And the first house that we found on Zillow to rent just happened to be in Independence, and it was the perfect home, and we got it and we lived there for a year, and then the owners decided that they wanted to sell it. By this point we had sold our homestead in Kansas and we were ready to buy a home, and so that's what we did. We now own property here in Independence, and in this year that we've lived here, I've seen so many things, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. I've seen so many things specifically here around the Temple Lot area. The most amazing thing to me was when we had that incredible aurora display, and I was able to come here and see it from the Temple Lot. We've talked a lot about these auroras that have been seen throughout the entire United States, really far south, even as far south as Mexico, and how they have felt like signs. The first two I experienced down in Kansas, but then the third one right here at the Temple Lot. I also had the privilege of filming inside the white chapel here. This belongs to Church of Christ Temple Lot. I was here one day and I was talking to one of the guys that runs the visitor center. I think it's only open on like Fridays and Saturdays or something, but we were having a good conversation, and he let me film inside the entire white chapel, which is an opportunity that I never thought that I would have. Over here, one of the first things that I experienced after moving here was the 2025 World Conference of Community of Christ. And I happened to be here on a day, and after the session that they ordained their first female prophet president, Stassi Cramm. And I was over there at the temple in the World Plaza. They had a big screen set up showing the proceedings that were taking place inside the auditorium. And after they were done with that session, they had like a celebratory procession in which they came out these doors right here, and there was like a choir or a musical group and you know, they had the streets blocked off, and they all came out here, including Stassi Cramm, and walked down this road over to the World Plaza where they had a big celebration. And I didn't expect it, but I was able to meet Stassi Cramm. They had like a pop-up tent set up for her, and she was being greeted by members of her church and congratulated by them. I got in line and decided to go ahead and meet her and congratulate her. Another thing that happened was when I first moved here, I didn't realize all that there was to see here in Independence. And the day that I found out about this sidewalk marker, and the day that I decided to come over here and film it, was the day before a church news article came out talking about the fact that the man that owns the mold for this plaque, he turned it into the church along with other Missouri related items. But it was the day after I came and filmed this sidewalk marker for the first time. I later came to find out that that's marker number 1 of the Missouri Mormon walking trail, which is made up of 14 similar markers. The first one is over here. It's for the temple lot. The next one, I think number 2, is over there for the Flournoy house. And then you walk over there into downtown Independence, and there's a bunch of other ones over there, including one for the W.W. Phelps print shop that was burned down. When you come to the Independence Visitor Center, they have like a reproduction of it. As you're taking the tour, you go downstairs and they have like a print shop that they've reconstructed. But the actual location is just right down there in downtown Independence. It only takes like a few minutes to walk there. At the Independence Visitor Center, I had a couple special experiences there. The first one happened during Community of Christ 2025 World Conference. On this particular day, I had gone over to the 8 Witnesses Monument in Liberty. I was making a video over there, and I was done, and so we started to drive home, and we got an alert on our phone saying that there was a tornado warning for Jackson County. And a tornado warning is different from a watch. A watch just means that, you know, there's the possibility of a tornado. But when it's a warning, it means that it is happening. So take cover. And so we were driving back home, which brought us through downtown Independence, and we weren't going to be able to get home in time. And so the only place that I knew to go to find shelter was the Independence Visitor Center. We got there just in time as it started raining really hard and the tornado hit. The tornado wasn't around here. There were actually 2 of them. One took place by the Chiefs Stadium and the Royal Stadium. But then the other one, it turns out, I found out later, that it was the closest tornado to the temple lot since 1950. Now, it wasn't like really close to here. I don't know how many miles, probably a couple miles away, but the closest one since 1950. And it struck as Community of Christ was holding a session in the auditorium over there. And it struck a company on Truman Road called Temple Engineering. Now, they don't construct temples, I realize that. They, I guess, produce chemicals for the railroad industry. But just the fact that it was called Temple Engineering, I thought that was really interesting, because one of the big things about this place is we're waiting for the day when there's the Temple of Independence, you know, the New Jerusalem, as well as the 24 Temple Complex. And so I wondered if that was some kind of sign or foreshadowing of things to come. But anyway, there was that tornado. There was also Canadian wildfire smoke that was covering the skies of the Kansas City area. And it started the day that they started their World Conference. I have some pictures and video of it, but it made for some really nice pictures, and it made that whole week feel kind of surreal. When they have their World Conference, it's not just over a weekend like our church. It takes, I think it's like 9 days. is how long it took. But anyway, there was that. Also at the Independence Visitor Center, you can kind of see the top of it right there from here. I didn't know that the church hosts a fireworks show every year on the grounds of the visitor center on the 5th of July. That was a really fun thing to do. If you come to visit around that time, I would encourage you to go watch the fireworks, because they close off all these roads right here. Like there's the intersection, and they close the road off like up there where the light is, and over there and over there and down there. And this whole area just gets flooded with people. And there's so many places that you can watch the fireworks. You had people over here in the World Plaza, people over there with their camping chairs on the temple lot. There were food trucks and vendors, and there was like a city orchestra or something like that that was playing patriotic songs. It was really fun. Now this year, I checked with the visitor center, and they said it's actually going to be on the 27th of June because of the FIFA World Cup, because I guess some of the games are being played here in Kansas City, and for some reason they're not going to do it on the 5th of July. It may also be that this year the 5th of July is on a Sunday. So, but I got to see that, and I got to go inside the temple here. I wanted to see what their World Conference looked like and experience it. They had an expo inside where there were booths set up for different things, different charities and causes. There were some people that were selling jewelry. There was a booth by Graceland University, which is Community of Christ College, their university, their equivalent to BYU. I was here to see them, well, let's go back this way. I was here to see them put in these new stairs right here. Just before moving here, there were chain link fences set up, and this area was blocked off, and they completely redid these steps. I'm guessing because the old steps were maybe cracked or whatever. I've heard that this building is on a bad foundation and it's settling, and maybe had something to do with that. I'm not sure. But these are brand new steps, and also it wasn't until recently, maybe like a couple months ago, that the scaffolding was taken down around the auditorium. Pretty much almost the whole year that I've been here, they've been working on the auditorium. And then one thing that I think is really interesting is there's this project going on in the City of Independence called Imagine Independence 2040, in which the city is going through this like revitalization, renovation type thing, where they're doing all this stuff. And I was here to see them redo historic downtown Independence. They put in new sidewalks and redid the parking, and I think there's a new statue that went up, if I remember right. But it's interesting because I have to wonder if somehow it's Second Coming related, that in a way that they're able to, not that they're doing it for the Second Coming, but I wonder if it was like inspired to where this area is being beautified in preparation for the time when the church is headquartered here, or whatever events take place here during, like maybe before, during, and after the Second Coming. I know that they have, I think, changed up this garden up here they did something to where they have like native plants and flowers up here. They like redid this, and they put up these new signs. There's 4 of them. Each one is in English, Spanish, and French, but pretty much each one of these talk about, you know, what they call the sacredness of creation, and it's basically like environmentalist messaging, more or less. Welcome to our rooftop prairie garden. And then something that we're going to be seeing pretty soon, they actually put out a financial update on their YouTube channel. Community of Christ did, and I've already covered this on the channel because they put out a statement on their website first, but they are going to be spending $10 million to basically renovate the auditorium in the temple with like the heating system and lighting and other things. So you know, this whole area is getting repaired. We've wondered and speculated if they may sell the auditorium and temple. And on the one side, it sounds like they are getting ready for some big move. I've covered that in previous videos. In this most recent statement, well, the video and the statement, they make it seem as though, no, they're not going to let these properties go. And maybe that's the case, but it could also be the case that if they do end up selling this area, they'd have to get it all up to, you know, the correct standard for whoever's going to buy it, which, you know, presumably would be the church. Because if our church purchased these properties, I highly doubt that they would immediately demolish it or change it or anything like that. I mean, I guess the church could, but that would be, I think, a lot to take in for the city of Independence and the residents around here. If the church, like, it's already big enough news if the church were to purchase this area, and then if all of a sudden they just immediately started tearing things down, that would probably be pretty jarring. And so if there's still a chance that they may sell the auditorium in the temple, maybe they're just making the necessary fixes. You know, I just purchased a house, and there were things that we asked the seller to fix and replace, and they did. Thankfully, they put on a new roof. There had been hail damage, and the roof needed to be replaced, and so maybe it's something like that. In the video, they were talking about how, you know, they're going to be okay until 2029, but after 2029, you know, something's going to have to happen. They talked about different things that they're doing to make sure that they're able to to continue operations, but it made me wonder, you know, if they're concerned about their financial situation, why they would be spending $10 million, which for them is a lot, on fixing these buildings. And I don't know, maybe that just makes perfect sense. I don't know. But I'm going to keep an eye on it, and we'll see what happens this next year. Maybe we'll see some more signs in the heavens. Maybe we won't. Maybe property will change hands. Maybe it won't. Another thing I was able to witness and participate in after moving here was not so much here in the Temple Lot area, but up at Far West, they dedicated the Charles C. Rich cabin. Elder Charles C. Rich was a member of the Quorum of the 12, And his cabin is the only surviving structure from the Far West period. And they have it, if you just go a little bit north of the temple site, you'll come across the Far West Historical Society and store. And on that same property in the parking lot, you'll see the cabin. And they also unveiled a new statue of Charles C. Rich. So at that location, they already had a nice statue, like a bronze statue of Joseph Smith, but now they have a matching one for Charles C. Rich. So I felt like that was significant, just because, I mean, you already have the temple site, but you have this other building that represents the presence of the church and the membership of the church in the Far West area. And, you know, and it was dedicated. It feels like there's something to that. And then I was also here to witness the creation of 3 new stakes. I can't for the life of me remember the other 2 stakes. I just know that they were created, but one of those stakes was the Grand River stake, which used to be part of the Far West stake, but now it's its own stake, and it's essentially the stake of Adam-ondi-Ahman, because Grand River is the river that goes around the valley of Adam-ondi-Ahman, or like goes on the south side of it. And then I've mentioned this a number of times recently, but we have the upcoming creation of the Missouri-Kansas City mission, which is being created out of the Missouri Independence Mission. So I think that's pretty significant. Here's a matching stone that says Temple Lot, and for some reason it has those rocks on top. Somebody did that for some reason, probably just for fun. I have really enjoyed living in Independence. I love having easy access to all these sacred sites. I somewhat frequently go to Adam-ondi-Ahman and Far West. Back when we lived in Kansas, my wife and I enjoyed going on drives in the country, and we still do here. It's just that we have these amazing places to drive to, and it's so peaceful. And I especially love going to Adam-ondi-Ahman because you can hike those trails and have privacy, pray out loud, meditate. It's really good. Independence itself has been great. There's a few areas here I'm not a big fan of, you know, because there are parts that are nice. There are other parts that are a little bit run down. I especially like the east side of the city because it starts to, well, you start to see newer and newer developments, and it starts to transition into country, and you have a bunch of homesteads that are within city limits. It's actually a pretty large city as far as the city limits go. We do pretty much everything here in Independence. We don't typically go to other cities for shopping or anything else. Yeah, I don't know. I have no complaints about living in this area. The only thing, and this applies to the entire Kansas City area, is there are a lot of potholes. For some reason, there are a lot of potholes on the roads and also the freeways. I don't really know what that's about, but it's not really that big of a deal. So yeah, I mean, we purchased a house here, so I see myself living here for a while, but that could always change. But for all I know, maybe I'll always stay in this house. Maybe I'll stay here permanently. We'll just have to see how this plays out. I think we're going to be seeing some interesting things in the next few years. You know, if the second coming hasn't already happened by then. I'm really curious to see what's going to happen with Community of Christ as they try and navigate their financial struggles. I'm going to be curious to see what happens with Church of Christ Temple Lot, because I can't imagine that they're much better off. You have this rising wave of secularism, and in the case of Community of Christ, that's kind of a good thing, because they're a very liberal church. They have very liberal values, but at the same time, you know, they rely on tithing. They do have some other sources of revenue, but why would you pay tithing to a church that doesn't teach that tithing is a commandment, or, you know, that it's a sin if you don't pay tithing? They were saying in the meeting that, and we already knew this, but the majority of their tithe payers are 65 years old or older. That's where most of their tithing is coming from. In the case of Church of Christ, I don't know. They don't really put out that much information. They're a much, much, much smaller church. The most recent figure that I've seen from 2013 was that they only have 7,000 members. So my subscribership to Christian Homestead is several times larger than Church of Christ Temple Lot, which is kind of stunning. But whenever I watch either one of their services, because they post their stuff online, you don't see a lot of young people or children. Especially with Church of Christ Temple Lot, it's mostly seniors from what I've seen. I do want to start attending some of their services just to get more hands-on and get a better idea. I'm very curious about these different groups that are here. So whenever I do that, and as I have my own experiences, I'll share them with you. But I think I'm going to wrap it up here. This is a good spot to do it. I absolutely love this sidewalk marker. As far as I know, it's the only depiction, like the only artistic depiction of Joseph Smith at the Temple Lot. Joseph Smith, Sidney Rigdon, and then you have 6 other men. So there's Joseph Smith and 7 others. And then I don't know who this woman is. It seems like she's holding an infant, and then there's a child right here. I don't know who that is. I have one of the accounts of what happened here, but I don't remember seeing any mention of a woman being there. But I absolutely love this, and I'm so happy that that guy decided to give the mold to the church. It also raises the question, who has the other 13 molds, because there's 14 markers total. So where are those at? I would love for those to come back into the possession of the church for safekeeping. But anyway, that's gonna be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.